So, Doctor, let's change subject and talk a little bit about your experience at work as serving as an expert. Have you served as an expert witness before?
Yes, I have.
What types of cases?
Practically all of them have been in medical malpractice, so I've done it for both the plaintiff, for the patient side, and I've done for the defense, for the physician side.
Have you ever been involved in a criminal case before?
No, I have never been involved in a criminal case.
Have you testified in court before?
I've testified in court. I don't keep track of the numbers, but I suspect I've been in court about 50 times.
Would you tell the ladies and gentlemen if you're getting paid for your time in this case?
No, I am not getting paid.
And why is that?
Well, when I was asked to do the case, I thought I might have some knowledge that would be helpful to explain how Mr. Floyd died. And since I'd never done this type of work in this nature before, I decided I didn't wish to be paid for it.
So did you volunteer to the state of Minnesota, or did the state of Minnesota call you?
The state of Minnesota contacted me.
What were you asked to do, Dr. Chauvin?
I was asked to review the medical records related to the case. These were medical records from Hennepin County. Then there were a number of interviews of people that were interviewed. I was given a long list of these, and primarily it was related to looking at a large number of different videos. But of course then the big part was that I needed to read on the scientific background of all the various aspects related to it.
So let's talk about your opinions with respect to this case. Have you formed an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty on the cause of Mr. Floyd's death?
Yes, I have.
Would you please tell the jury what that opinion or opinions are?
Yes, Mr. Floyd died from a low level of oxygen, and this caused damage to his brain that we see, and it also caused a PEA arrhythmia that caused his heart to stop.
And by PEA, you mean pulseless electrical activity?
Correct. It's a particular form of an abnormal beat of the heart, an arrhythmia, and a particular form of it.
Is this what some persons might refer to as asphyxia?
Yes, it has been called asphyxia. To me, it's not terribly helpful. It just, what we're really talking about is a low level of oxygen. Other people talk about hypoxia. That again is just a Latin term meaning a low level of oxygen. So all of this is just really other words for a phenomenon that is a low level of oxygen.
Have you formed an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty as to what the cause is or was for the low level of oxygen in Mr. Floyd?
Yes, I have.
Would you tell us what that is?
The cause of the low level of oxygen was shallow breathing. Small breaths, small tidal volumes, shallow breaths that weren't able to carry the air through his lungs down to the essential areas of the lungs that get oxygen into the blood and get rid of the carbon dioxide. That's the alveoli at the bottom of the lung.
Dr. Chauvin, would using a short video that you prepared help you explain to the jurors how oxygen gets into the lungs and the body? How we take in oxygen?
Yep.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 950. Can you describe first what that is?
So here we're looking at the lungs inside a body, and we see here that you can see the windpipe up at the top, the trachea, and then that splits into the bronchial tubes. And also you can see the diaphragm down at the bottom. And when the diaphragm contracts, there will be air moving.
The jurors can't see it yet, so I'm just having you just identify.
Oh, I'm sorry, terribly sorry. I apologize.
Yeah, I'm going to offer it, Your Honor. Exhibit 950.
950 is received.
Yeah, please proceed. We'll display it so the jurors can see it.
Okay, so now we're looking, and you can see the contraction of the diaphragm. That's the kind of pink area down at the bottom. We see air going down through the windpipe and then proceeding down to the bronchial tubes. And then it was going to continue down the bronchial tubes until it will reach out to the air sacs, which will be the alveoli. And now we're seeing that we're moving down here, and these are like the grape-like structures down at the bottom, and this is where all the action occurs. The oxygen goes across those air sacs, and also the CO2 goes across them, then it's expelled back out. So that's everything in a very rapid video.
So then what happened in the case of Mr. Floyd that relates to the shallow breathing that resulted in his low oxygen?
So there are a number of forces that led to that the size of his breath became so small. And so there are a series of forces higher up that are leading to that. And the main forces that are going to lead to the shallow breath are going to be that he's turned prone on the street, that he has the handcuffs in place combined with the street, and then that he has a knee on his neck, and then that he has a knee on his back and on his side. All of these four forces are ultimately going to result in the low tidal volume, which gives you the shallow breaths that we saw here. And so the air will not be able to reach those air sacs we just saw in the video, where the oxygen is exchanged and the carbon dioxide is removed.
Doctor, is there a concept that in the respiratory medicine field known as dead space?
Yes, there is.
How does that relate to Mr. Floyd?
So if you think of the video back all the way until you saw those clusters of grapes, where you saw the blood vessels surrounding the alveoli, everything up to there is dead space. So as you're breathing in through your nose, your mouth goes down through your windpipe, down through the bronchial tubes, radiating out until it reaches the air sacs. Up till you get to the air sacs, it's all dead space, because the reason we call it is because no oxygen can get across those bronchial tubes. No carbon dioxide can get across it. The oxygen and the carbon dioxide, the only place that gets across is those little grape-like structures. So everything in the lungs before that is dead space.
So you mentioned several reasons for Mr. Floyd's low oxygen, and I just want to capture those for the jury, and then we'll talk about them. You mentioned one, handcuffs and the street. Right?
Correct.
You mentioned knee on the neck.
Yep.
Sorry for my writing. You'll know what I didn't get an A in school. The prone position.
Yep.
And then the knee on the back, arm inside. Were those the four?
Yep, these are the four.
Okay. So we want to talk about each of these, but before we do that, might it be helpful for explaining your testimony to the jury for them to see the relative positioning of the various officers on Mr. Floyd's body when he was subdued on the ground?
Yes, I think that would be very helpful.
Did you assist in preparing an illustration to show the relative position of the officers on the ground?
Yes, I did.
And let me show you what's been marked as Exhibit 949. Could you just tell us, describe generally for the record what it is?
I mean, I watched the videos and certain segments of the videos hundreds of times, and it's very difficult to kind of get an overall view of where everybody is positioned, because you're seeing different videos from different angles. And so the artist has taken all the different videos here and he's combined them into one moment in time. And you can see here, and also he will remove the police vehicle, so you're going to get a better view. So you're looking kind of at a bird's eye view of where Mr. Floyd is lying and where the officers are positioned in relationship. to Mr. Floyd.
Right. So the purpose of this is to show the relative positions of the officers on the
Correct.
Your Honor, we would offer Exhibit 949.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
949 is received.
So what point in time, if you told us that this was at a particular point in time?
Right, it is a particular point in time. I don't remember the exact minute, second at the top of my head, but it is like...
It was 8:21 and 44 seconds?
That's exactly correct.
About right?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. So let's walk through Exhibit 949, Brad, if you could advance. And Doctor, tell us what we're seeing.
Okay. Yep. Now you can see the car is being rotated. You're able to see Officer Chauvin. You're able to see Officer King, and then Officer Lane down at his feet. You see underneath Mr. Floyd, and now the car is being rotated. Now the car has been removed. And so you're able to see how they're positioned at different points. In terms of with Officer Chauvin with his left knee on the neck, his right knee on Mr. Floyd's arm and chest, and then you can see here Officer Lane holding his legs, and then you can see Officer King with his knee on his torso.
So this represents a snapshot in time, as you told us. Did the officers' positions change over time as they were there on the ground?
Yes, the officers' positions changed over time, and also the position of Mr. Floyd himself changed over time, and these become relevant in how we evaluate everything.
And was it something you factored into your analysis then?
Yes.
Did you consider where Mr. Chauvin's left knee was during the encounter?
Yes. For Officer Chauvin's left knee is virtually on the neck for the vast majority of the time.
And when you say vast majority, are you able to be more
It's
specific?
more than 90% of the time in my calculations. There's certain times where it becomes difficult because you don't get a good view of where it is. So, for example, I know that an Officer Chauvin's right knee is on his back 57% of the time. The reason I'm not able to say for the 43% is that I don't get a good view. I can, other times, don't have a good view of exactly where it is.
So did you focus on the first 5 minutes and few seconds?
Yes, I focused on the first 5 minutes, 3 seconds, because that is up to the time that we see evidence of brain injury.
So if Mr. Chauvin's right knee was on his back from time to time, at other times it was placed where, in your observation?
It was placed on his arm and then rammed in to Mr. Floyd's left chest. So really, whether you're making a distinction of whether the knee is on the chest per se, or whether it's on the left arm and rammed in against the left chest, from the point of view of breathing, the effects are extremely similar.
So let's turn to the number one on the.
Your notes were.
Oh yes, on the dot cam. So I wanted to turn back to the notes that the number one here that written down for the reasons you told us for Floyd's low oxygen, Mr. Floyd's low oxygen, handcuffs and the street, to talk about the first one. Could you first, Dr. Tobin, tell us how these various mechanisms, the four that you've discussed, handcuffs in the street, knee on the neck, prone position, knee on the neck, back, knee on the back, arm and side. How do those mechanisms fall into your work of either respiratory physiology or clinical medicine?
They don't have an awful lot to do with clinical medicine, but they are directly related to my work in physiology. So in understanding the forces that the body has to cope with, these are crucial into terms of the various forces that are involved in physiology.
So then, turning to the first one in handcuffs and the street, the very first one, what is the effect of the handcuffs in the context of what happened to Mr. Floyd?
The handcuffs are extremely important in Mr. Floyd, but the handcuffs on their own, just handcuffs per se, are not that important. It must be the handcuffs combined with the street. And it's because of the positioning of the handcuffs at the back, then how he's manipulated with the handcuffs by both Officer Chauvin and by Officer King, how they manipulate the handcuffs, and they're pushing the handcuffs into his back and pushing them high. Then on the other side, you have the street. So the street is playing a crucial part because he's against a hard asphalt street. So the way they're pushing down on his handcuffs combined with the street, his left side, and it's particularly the left side we see that. It's like the left side is in a vice. It's totally being pushed in, squeezed in from each side, from the street at the bottom, and then from the way that the handcuffs are manipulated. It's not just the handcuffs. It's how the handcuffs are being held, how they're being pushed, where they're being pushed, that totally interfere with central features of how we breathe.
So Mr. Floyd then is pancaked between the pavement underneath him and then force on top of him.
Precisely.
Now, could you help us to explain how this mechanism, the handcuffs and the street, how does it explain the shallow breathing that you've described?
Yeah. So this gets back to how we breathe. And this is fairly simple. So the way we breathe, we have two big muscles that help us with breathing. We have the diaphragm and we have the rib cage muscles. The diaphragm does about 70% of what we need for breathing, and about 30% of it comes from the rib cage. And when the diaphragm contracts, or the rib cage contract, they expand the chest. And when you expand the chest, then air flows in from outside, and it's coming in. And that's all that happens on inspiration. But to expand the chest, there's two crucial actions that have to happen. And we refer to these by the terms pump handle and bucket handle. So if bucket handle is simple. So if you have a regular bucket that you carry water with, and you lift up the handle of the bucket, the handle comes up like this. And so when you contract your diaphragm, you are performing a bucket handle movement on the rib cage. So you contract your diaphragm like that, and each time as you inspire, you can see it yourself. As you inspire, each of you there in the jury, you inspire, you see that your rib cage is going outwards like that. That's a bucket handle movement. The second movement that you have is called the pump handle. And this reflects to an old water pump that would be in the yard for pumping out water. And so you have the handle at the top of the pump. And you lift up the handle of the pump each time. And the water comes out the spout at the bottom. So you're filling up, getting your container of water. So with that action you're lifting up here, this refers to the front to back movement of the chest wall. So with the pump handle, your chest goes out with each breath. And so you can do it yourself. As you take a deep breath, you can feel that front to back, you're expanding your chest. The front to back expansion of your chest is with your pump handle. At the same time, you're doing both of them at the same time. At the same time you're doing that, your chest is expanding from side to side, and that's with your bucket handle. So both of these are occurring And these are vital. Without these, you can't breathe. If you don't have the bucket handle working and the pump handle working, there's nothing happening. There's no air going to get in there.
So, Doctor, do you have a photograph that you brought that would help to better understand the pump handle and bucket handle?
Yes.
Let me show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 951. Do you recognize what this photograph depicts?
Yes.
Is it an